Chapter 632. It seems that more planning is needed. Jing Lang pursed his lips slightly and said, "Let's wait until the 9 emperors come in and meet before we make our plans." Jing Yu nodded slightly in agreement, and the two of them chatted for a while. Just as Jing Yu was about to stand up and return to her room, her sharp ears heard the sound of footsteps in front of the door and a faint voice. "Is this the place? Miss Bomi lives here?" A very gentle and soothing voice sounded. Jing Yu and Jing Lang both trembled when they heard this. Yes, 2 guests from the west came with Miss Qin's letter. This humble one paid special attention to it and found that it is here, another voice replied. Jing Yu and Jing Lang both stood up and slowly walked towards the door. "I haven't seen Brother Lang in a long time. I really miss you." The sound of footsteps entered, and a moment later, there was the sound of knocking on the door. Jing Yu and Jing Lang looked at each other, and their eyes were filled with seriousness. They looked at each other and quietly walked into the room. The sound of knocking was still there, and then there was the sound of the door being pushed open. Someone walked in and asked in a slightly raised voice, "Is there anyone here? Why aren't they here?" The gentle female voice sounded again. This humble one clearly saw those 2 people come in. "Why aren't they here? Could it be that they have left?" Another voice answered. It sounded doubtful, and then said, "I'll go downstairs and ask if anyone saw anyone go out." "Go quickly," the woman said with slight displeasure. "I will wait here for now." "Okay." The sound of footsteps left and the room became quiet. Jing Yu and Jing Lang, who were hiding in the room, frowned slightly. This person had actually sat down here. It seemed that this was going to be troublesome. Jing Yu and Jing Lang didn't move and didn't show themselves. Hearing the sound of drinking tea and putting down the teacup, the woman seemed to be impatient. She stood up slightly and walked around. As she walked, she actually walked towards Jing Yu and Jing Lang. Immediately, Jing Yu and Jing Lang tensed up. They lowered their heads slightly and saw a shadow walking towards the inner room. However, it paused at the door and turned around. They didn't know what it was doing. Jing Yu's eyebrows twitched as she watched. She raised her hand slightly and gestured to Jing Lang to retreat. Jing Lang pursed his lips and slowly took a few steps back. Jing Yu moved and took a few steps forward. At this moment, the figure also approached. The moment the figure approached, Jing Yu's body suddenly flashed. Her hand formed into a claw, and without hesitation, she grabbed the woman's throat and covered her mouth with her other hand. In the blink of an eye, she dragged the woman into the room. The woman's body stiffened and her eyes flashed with incomparable fear. Jing Yu could clearly feel the rhythm of the woman's heartbeat. "Don't make a sound." Jing Yu narrowed her eyes coldly. Her cold voice was close to the woman's ear and was filled with thick, killing intent. The woman's body stiffened. She turned her eyes and saw Jing Lang standing not far away with his hands behind his back. She nodded slightly, indicating that she definitely wouldn't make a sound. Jing Yu tried to release her hand. The woman's body stiffened slightly. Jing Yu saw that the woman didn't make a sound and slowly put her hand down. The 3 of them looked at each other. The woman's body trembled slightly. She took a deep breath and asked in a hoarse voice, "Where is the original identity?" Chapter 633. Don't worry, we didn't take anyone's life. Jing Yu looked at the woman in front of her. She was clearly terrified, but she was able to remain calm. Furthermore, she asked this question the moment she released the restraints. "Phew, that's good." The woman let out a sigh of relief. "You're Qin Ruishan from Luoyue Villa?" Jing Yu sized up this woman who was full of gentleness. She felt that this woman was not at all like the daughters of the officials in the imperial city. The arrogance between her eyebrows carried a rather chivalrous feeling. She was clearly a very gentle person, but there was a feeling that she would fight to the death with others at any time. "That's me." Qin Ruishan pursed her lips slightly and bowed politely to the 2 of them. She turned her eyes slightly to look at the 2 of them and said indifferently, "If I'm not wrong, the 2 of you are probably related to the criminal wanted by the imperial court?" Qin Ruishan pursed her lips slightly as she looked at the 2 of them. Her clear eyes were filled with wisdom. She was actually able to identify the 2 of them with a single sentence. This really surprised Jing Yu. She raised her eyebrows slightly and asked Qin Ruishan with interest, "How did you know?" "I guessed." Qin Ruishan calmed down when she heard Jing Yu's answer. She looked at the 2 of them and said, to be able to enter Yangzhou City at such a time. Other than being forced into a corner, what else could it be? Tokyo's wanted posters are posted all over the city. Such a huge incident has already spread throughout Tokyo. How could I not know? Qin Ruishan pursed her lips and said, "Furthermore, my intuition has always been very accurate." How interesting. Jingyu crossed her arms and looked at Qin Ruishan with interest. She said, "Since you've guessed our identities, why didn't you shout? In my opinion, you're not a young lady without any martial arts. As the eldest young lady of Luoyue Villa, you shouldn't be like this. Why didn't you do anything?" Jingyu looked at Qin Ruishan and raised her eyebrows. "Why should I shout? What do you think I should do?" Qin Ruishan curled her lips in disdain. "I've seen a lot of things in Jianghu. Those sanctimonious gentlemen can be found everywhere. Could it be that the 9th Emperor's is really a traitor? Is the 9th Imperial concubine really a demon? If that's true, then what?" Qin Ruishan stared fixedly at Jingyu. There was no fear in her eyes. She didn't have any other thoughts. She just stared at Jingyu with clear eyes filled with disdain. To put it bluntly, the 9th Emperor's. Qin Ruishan raised her eyebrows. The 9th Emperor's and brought death. Qin Ruishan raised her brows slightly and looked at the two of them. "I don't know who you are, and I don't want to know. I don't belong to any side, so I won't lend you a helping hand or expose your whereabouts. How can we trust you?" Jingyu raised her eyebrows and looked at Qin Ruishan. "The best way to ensure that you won't reveal your whereabouts is to silence them. What do you think? Do you think that killing the young lady of Luoyue Villa won't reveal our whereabouts? That it won't be revealed sooner?" Qin Ruishan asked calmly. Her question stumped Jingyu. At this moment, footsteps came from outside and a voice called out, "Young lady Qin, are you there?" This voice clearly belonged to the servant who had just left. Chapter 634. This voice clearly belonged to the waiter who had just left. This is a chance to prove yourself. Do you want to try?" Qin Ruishan wasn't in a hurry to speak. Instead, she calmly looked at the two and asked. Jingyu slightly tilted her head and met Jinglang's eyes. Qin Ruishan had already lifted the curtain and walked out. She calmly said, "I'm here, young lady Qin." The waiter curiously looked at Qin Ruishan, who had just walked out, and asked, "I've asked around. I didn't see anyone who lives here leave. Did they wander around the restaurant? Does young lady Qin still want to wait here?" "It's fine. The two of them aren't used to Yangzhou's climate and are sleeping inside," Qin Ruishan said. "There's nothing else for you to do. You can leave first. Miss Bomi is changing her clothes. This young lady will be staying here for a while." "Oh, I see." The waiter suddenly understood. "Who's here?" At this moment, a voice rang out from the inner room. Jingyu had indeed changed into a set of light clothes. She rubbed the space between her eyebrows as if she was very tired. She walked out and asked in confusion, "Oh, so it's a waiter from the restaurant." Jingyu very amicably bowed slightly to the waiter. "Bomi, you're really something. I almost couldn't find you." Qin Ruishan's expression and actions were all on point. She didn't show any signs of unfamiliarity as she intimately held onto Jingyu's arm. Jingyu also sat down with Qin Ruishan. "It's my fault. I'm not used to Yangzhou's climate," Jingyu said as she rubbed her head in discomfort. "You're from the West. It's natural that you're not used to this place. You'll get used to it after a few more days," Qin Ruishan calmly replied. She turned to the waiter and said, "What are you still doing here?" Yes. This humble one will take his leave." The manservant listened to their conversation and observed their movements and expressions without batting an eyelid. Only then did he put down the last trace of doubt in his heart and completely admitted that these two people from the West were the real deal. Jingyu and Qin Ruishan watched as the servant left and slowly let go of each other's hands. Jingyu looked at Qin Ruishan calmly and said, "Didn't you say that you wouldn't help us? Then why did you do that just now? You should know that earlier, you used my life to threaten me. Naturally, I would want to completely escape." Qin Ruishan stood up and said, "I can guarantee that not a single word of what happened today will come out of my mouth. However, there's no such thing as an airtight wall in this world. Both of you take care." After saying that, Qin Ruishan turned and left. She didn't take any precautions, didn't probe, and didn't leave any clues behind. Jingyu looked at Qin Ruishan's back as she left. A faint look of interest flashed in her eyes. This woman was really an interesting person. Jing Lang only came out after seeing the door close again. He raised his eyebrows and looked at Jingyu and said, These are the sons and daughters of the Jianghu. What a good son and daughter of the Jianghu. Jingyu praised lightly. She walked to the window and said, This restaurant isn't safe. I wonder how Xiao Chun and the rest are doing now. Xiao Chun. He must have a way to get in. Jing Lang was also curious. How did Xiao Chun get in? Jingyu slightly raised her head and didn't say anything. Chapter 635. Outside Yangzhou City, an incomparably large group of people was slowly moving through the intersection. Their black flags were emitting a rather gloomy aura. The ink-black carriage was moving towards the city gate. There was a skull symbol on the carriage which made the people on the road retreat. Hell King's people have arrived? So scary. The passers-by on the road revealed a look of extreme horror in their eyes. In an instant, a large path was opened up on the originally crowded road. The complexion of the guards at Yangzhou City's gate changed as the black carriage entered. Who in Jianghu didn't know the name of Hell King? Just hearing this name made people panic. If Hell King wanted you to die at midnight, he wouldn't let you live until dawn. This was the name of Hell King. Hell Sect was also known as Nether Sect. The leader of this Nether Sect was Hell King. He was cruel and ruthless. He had massacred a lot of people. It was said that Hell King's appearance was very frightening. He wore a mask all day long. It was said that as long as someone saw Hell King's face, they would be scared to death. Strange rumors could be heard everywhere. It could be said that the Nether Sect was very popular 5 or 6 years ago. However, it was also at that time that a group of martial artists gathered together and ruthlessly suppressed the Nether Sect. It was said that countless experts had fallen in that war. However, the Nether Sect had also suffered heavy losses. It was also after that battle that the Nether Sect received heavy losses and quietly disappeared from the Jianghu. Their style of conduct had also become very low-key. It had been a long time since the Nether Sect's people had moved out with such great fanfare. Looking at those white skeletons, and then looking at the black carriage, one could almost feel a cold wind from afar, making the people on the side of the road tremble. Looking at those little ghosts under the King of Hell, they felt as if they were floating, as if they didn't have feet. The person in charge of the inspection in Yangzhou City saw the slow-moving carriages, and his legs suddenly trembled. How could he inspect them? Even if he was given 100 guts, he wouldn't dare to stop Hell Sect's carriages. In the past, he heard that there was a young master who claimed to be from a relatively large sect. He blocked the carriage of the King of Hell. However, the people of Nether Sect didn't even greet him and directly chopped him into minced meat. This wasn't the most frightening thing. The most frightening thing was that the driver of this sect wanted to take revenge. However, before they could even take action, they were slaughtered by Nether Sect's people in one night. What kind of method was this? What kind of power was that? A small shrimp like me really can't be provoked. The person in charge of the inspection silently took a few steps back as he muttered in his heart, King of Hell, just pretend that you didn't see me. Hurry up and go over. The inspector thought silently. However, the moment the Prime Minister's residence landed, the carriage that was originally moving stopped in front of the inspector. Immediately, the inspector sensed it and pairs of incomparably cold eyes looked towards Ji Yunshu. That feeling was as if there were countless large knives placed on his neck. My lord? The man's back immediately broke out in cold sweat. He even stuttered when he spoke. Could it be that he was blocking the path of the King of Hell? My God, the King of Hell is going to kill me. This king heard that entering the city requires inspection. The black curtain of the carriage was slowly lifted. Chapter 636. Inside the black carriage, one could vaguely see a figure sitting there. His clothes seemed to be exuding an incomparably gloomy and cold aura. The words he spat out were so cold that when one heard it, it almost caused one to instantly stiffen from the inside out. No need. The person in charge of the inspection trembled violently and said, The inspection has already been completed. Oh, the voice of the man in the carriage dragged out slightly. He seemed to be faintly displeased as he asked, "Then can this king enter the city now?" "Yes, yes." The person nodded repeatedly. He was extremely conflicted in his heart. "I didn't ask you to stop. You stopped on your own accord. You're even displeased. I'm so scared that I'm about to have a heart attack." The person in charge of the inspection respectfully escorted the group of carriages into the city. On the black carriage, the curtains of the carriage were slightly lifted. A man wearing a black robe tightly covered his mouth as he looked tearfully at a certain person who was sitting upright in the carriage with a serious expression. The man in black raised his hand and took off the mask on his face, revealing a handsome face. Wasn't that Xiao Chun? Is it that funny? Xiao Chen gritted his teeth and glared at the person squatting on the ground, covering his mouth and trembling uncontrollably. If that face wasn't Qing Ji's, who else could it be? However, why was Qing Gu squatting on the ground with a tablecloth draped over his body? It was obvious that he was playing the role of a table in the carriage. At this moment, his entire body was trembling with laughter. Even the teacup beside him was shaking. Xiao Chen's face also completely darkened under Qing Ji's stifled laughter. "Ninth brother, just now, you were like an opera." Qing Gu was trying his best to hold back his laughter. He was trying so hard to hold back his laughter that tears came out. He looked at Xiao Chun as if he was about to go crazy from laughing. Xiao Chen's expression was extremely cold. He narrowed his eyes and stared at Qing Gu as he said, "Shut up." Qing Gu covered his mouth and rolled on the ground, trembling. The arrival of the Nether Sect's people had set off an uproar in Yangzhou City. Countless righteous people had been eyeing the Nether Sect's carriages covetously. However, it seemed as if the Nether Sect didn't want to make any move. They had quietly emptied a restaurant. Jingyu and Jinglang were sitting in the restaurant where the participants of the music contest were staying. They were listening to all kinds of voices coming from the table next to them. They heard the people of Nether Sect coming to Yangzhou City in the afternoon. The conversation was like this. Have you heard? Nether Sect's people seem to have come to Yangzhou City." "Nether Sect? What Nether Sect? You don't even know the Nether Sect?" "The Nether Sect that annihilated the Great Celestial Sect 6 years ago. Holy shit. Was it that big evil cult? Why did they come to Yangzhou? It had been 3 to 4 years since they heard any news about the Nether Sect. What's going on? Why did they suddenly appear with such great fanfare? I'm afraid the King of Hell has come to take people's lives." 2 or 3 people were discussing all kinds of mysteriously. They were talking about the Nether Sect as if they were gods. They were incomparably cruel and bloody. They were saying that the Nether Sect's people were not killing people but torturing people. If they didn't cripple people and make them wish they were dead, they wouldn't kill them. Moreover, the Nether Sect didn't just kill one person. They killed people and put them in a terrible situation. It was incomparably terrifying. Haven't you heard? The Nether Sect's King of Hell spoke at the city gate. Chapter 637. What? What did he say? Who knows what he said? Zhao San, who was originally at the city gate, apparently has a high fever after hearing King Yama's words. I don't know if he can be saved. Damn, that's terrifying. Could it be that your soul has really been taken away by the King of Hell after hearing a few words? Isn't that so? I heard that King Yama's voice is very scary. Ordinary people can't hear it. Jingyu bit her chopsticks as she listened to the strange discussions around her. Her face turned darker and darker. Why did it feel like they were in a different time and space when they had just left the Imperial City? What kind of nonsense was this? There really was someone who could steal souls. Fuck. I don't even know where my soul came from. I walked around hell and didn't see King Yama. Why am I still listening to their nonsense? Big brother, what's the dark sect? Jingyu bit her chopsticks as she looked at Jing Lang in confusion. He is not a thing. Jing Lang's expression was slightly strange as he pursed his lips. Oh. Jingyu nodded as if she understood. So it's not a thing. Then what is it? It's almost night. Where is Xiaochen? Jingyu put down her chopsticks and asked. She turned her head slightly to look at the weather outside the window and frowned. He couldn't have been caught, right? Jing Lang's expression darkened. Even you weren't caught. You actually thought that the 9 emperors would be caught? Jing Yu and Jing Lang returned to their rooms after eating. In order to not be too obvious, Jing Yu and Jing Lang couldn't walk around. Hence, they could only stay in the restaurant. As expected, Qin Ruishan didn't come to look for them. Their whereabouts in the restaurant weren't exposed. Clearly, Qin Ruishan was very trustworthy. Deep into the night, Jing Yu yawned as she lay on the bed drowsily. The candlelight flickered faintly, and the room was silent. Jing Yu turned over and was about to fall asleep when a figure suddenly appeared in the room. The silver mask was very dazzling under the candlelight. The man's black clothes outlined his tall and mighty figure. The candlelight flickered slightly as the man carefully walked towards Jing Yu's bed without making any sound. When he saw the woman sprawled on the bed, the corners of his mouth curled up into a faint smile. The man slowly approached Jing Yu. His body was elongated by the candlelight, and his shadow covered Jing Yu's body. The man bent down slightly as if he wanted to take a closer look at Jing Yu. However, Jing Yu, who was sleeping soundly, suddenly opened her eyes and sat up. He reached out and grabbed the man's neck. With a flip of his body, he pressed the man onto the bed. His pair of bright green eyes were incomparably enchanting. There was a faint smile on his lips as he looked at the man whose eyes were filled with astonishment. He said indifferently, "Xiao Chun, your concealment skills are getting worse and worse. Madam, your skills are also getting better and better." Xiao Chun's eyes moved slightly when he heard this. He raised his hand and grabbed Jing Yu's waist, pressing Jing Yu's body down. "Tell me, how did you get in?" Jing Yu raised her hand and poked Xiao Qin's face in displeasure. She stared at the mask on Xiao Qin's face and asked rather unhappily, "Why are you wearing a mask in the middle of the night? Are you afraid that someone will covet your beauty?" Chapter 638. Xiao Qin raised his hand and took off the mask. He raised the mask and said, "This mask is my identity." Huh. Jing Yu was slightly stunned. She looked at the mask in Xiao Qin's hand. Then, she seemed to have thought of something. She widened her eyes in horror and looked at Xiao Qun as though she had seen a ghost. She said, "You didn't sneak in with the Nether Sect's caravan, did you?" "Can't I?" Xiao Qun raised his eyebrows and asked calmly. Jing Yu's eyes flashed with a smile. She looked at Xiao Qian and said, "The great Ninth Emperor's actually disguised as a guard of the Jianghu's evil sect. It must have been hard on you." As soon as Jing Yu finished speaking, Xiao Qin's expression darkened. He frowned speechlessly and said, "When did I say I was pretending to be a guard?" "Huh, you weren't?" Jing Yu patted Xiao Qin's chest in disdain and said, "If you're not a guard, are you the king of hell? Don't joke around." Jing Yu patted Xiao Qun indifferently. However, she was stunned when she said those words. She lowered her head slightly and looked at the serious and expressionless Xiao Qun. His expression seemed to say, "That's right, I'm the king of hell." "Fuck, you're really the king of hell of the Nether Sect?" Jing Yu sat up in horror and looked at Xiao Qun from head to toe. Her eyes were filled with shock. Xiao Qun also sat up and looked at Jing Yu with interest. He asked, "Can I?" "Wait." Jing Yu looked at Xiao Qun with a serious expression and said, "You didn't kill the real king of hell, did you? Then, you replaced the real king of hell?" Xiao Qin's expression stiffened slightly. He looked at Jing Yu with gritted teeth and said, "This king is the sect master of the Nether Sect, the king of hell." This time, it was Jing Yu's turn to be stunned. She narrowed her eyes at Xiao Qun and said, "When did you become the king of hell of the Nether Sect? Aren't you the 9th Emperor's?" "Xiao Qun, how dare you lie to me? With such a good identity, they actually let me act as someone else. Do you know how scared I was? We were almost exposed." Jing Yu angrily rushed forward and grabbed Xiao Qun by the neck. She looked as if she wanted to eat Xiao Qun alive. "Really? I saw that you seemed to be having a lot of fun. Naturally, I couldn't bear to disturb you." Xiao Qun wrapped his arms around Jing Yu. His large hands roamed around Jing Yu's waist. He narrowed his eyes slightly and said indifferently, Your husband is so considerate. Is there a reward for me, madam? Reward your grandpa. Get off me. Jingyu broke free from Xiao Chun and raised her leg to kick Xiao Chen off the bed. However, she had just raised her leg when Xiao Chen quickly grabbed it. The two of them were in an ambiguous position. Madam, this king is your husband. Are you trying to kick me off the bed? Xiao Chen's fingers tightened around Jingyu's leg. His fingertips moved slightly on Jingyu's leg. The touch made one shudder, and Jingyu's body stiffened. She hastily broke free from Xiao Chen's grip. You scoundrel! Jingyu hastily crawled to the innermost part of the bed. She looked at Xiao Chen warily and said, Don't come over. All right, I won't go over. Xiao Chen spread his hands obediently and casually laid down on the bed. He tilted his head slightly to look at Jingyu and said, I won't go over. Madam, you shouldn't come over either. Otherwise, I don't know what I'll do to you. Chapter 639. Jingyu's expression darkened. She was rendered speechless by this shameless person. Aren't you the king of hell of the Nether sect? Why are you here? If someone finds out, we'll be done for. Jingyu hugged her pillow and glared at Xiao Chun resentfully. Chingu will take care of it. Xiao Chun closed his eyes slightly as though he was about to fall asleep. Xiao Chun, you still haven't told me how you got involved with the Nether sect? Jingyu asked as she rested her chin on her hand and looked at Xiao Chun. My mother isn't the daughter of an official. Xiao Chun raised his hand to cover his eyes as he said indifferently, Grandfather founded the Nether sect. It was supposed to be Mother's backing. However, it was suppressed by several forces. Mother was also implicated because she was the daughter of the evil sect's sect master. Xiao Chun rarely talked about his mother. This was the first time Jingyu heard about it. She was slightly stunned as she looked at Xiao Chun, who was speaking with his eyes covered. She pursed her lips slightly and moved her body closer to Xiao Chun. Xiao Chun's body stiffened slightly. He moved his hand away and looked at Jingyu. Jingyu blinked her eyes. Her green eyes slowly turned black. Her black eyes shone brightly, reflecting Xiao Chun. The Nether sect was originally planning to disband. If Mother didn't say before she died that she owed Grandfather and handed the Nether sect to me, Xiao Chun pursed his lips slightly and said, Since it's in my hands now, I'll naturally guard it well. A few years ago, Xiaoyi didn't pay much attention to me. However, 5 years ago, he became wary of me. In order to ensure the safety of the Nether sect, I completely separated myself from the Tokyo. Now that I've severed ties with the Nether sect, it doesn't matter whether the Nether sect hides itself or not. Xiao Chun raised his hand and hugged Jingyu tightly. Then, he picked up the mask and said, This mask was worn by my mother when she was still alive as the sect master of the Nether sect. At that time, my grandfather was being hunted down and his life was hanging by a thread. The Nether sect had no leader. Before I was born, my mother shouldered the heavy burden of the Nether sect alone. It's very precious. Xiao Chun gently rubbed the silver mask. Jingyu looked up at it. The silver mask didn't look old, but it was still bright. There was a faint, blood-red color in the silver pattern. It's my mother's relic. It's also my grandfather's relic. It's also the sect master of the Nether sect. The blood on this mask is my mother's blood. Xiao Chun rubbed the mask and raised his hand to put it aside. He looked at Jingyu and buried his head in Jingyu's neck. He didn't say anything. Since your mother gave birth to such a handsome man like you, she must have been a peerless beauty when she was alive. Jingyu glanced at the mask beside Xiao Chen's pillow. Then, she raised her hand and hugged Xiao Chen's back. Xiao Chen moved his head and looked at Jingyu's serious face. The corners of his mouth curled up slightly as he said, In this king's eyes, other than my mother, no woman in the world can be considered a beauty. However, madam, you're different. So, I'm also a beauty? Jingyu immediately became excited. Women, being praised by others would make her happy. Moreover, she was being praised by the person she liked. She immediately became happy. No. Xiao Chun calmly raised his eyebrows. These two words instantly dampened Jingyu's happiness. The smile on Jingyu's face froze. She looked at Xiao Chen with hidden bitterness. Her small eyes amused Xiao Chun. Chapter 640. Jingyu looked at Xiao Chun with great pleasure. She didn't care that Xiao Chun had asked her to pretend to be someone else yesterday. Xiao Chun rubbed Jingyu's head and said, "It's almost dawn. I'll leave first. As for the music club, we'll act according to the circumstances." Okay. Jingyu was quite relieved. Her man could scare people to death with just a word. What else was there to worry about? She could just leave it all to Xiao Chun. Jingyu's mentality could be said to be quite good. However, it turned out that men were actually unreliable. Not long after Xiao Chun left, the manager came to look for Jingyu. The restaurant also became lively. The first day of the music club's audition officially kicked off. The first thing was to draw lots to determine the order of performance and then pass the evaluation. What did you say? You want me to go up and play? Jingyu looked at the bamboo stick that Jing Lang handed over, dumbfounded. The big name on it was indeed Portman. What kind of name is this? Jingyu's face completely darkened. She looked at the number on the bamboo stick, number 44. Sure enough, this is the rhythm of going to die? This Western woman is a very powerful drum girl. Her dance is very inspiring and shocking. This is what the introduction in the letter says. Jing Lang looked at Jingyu's furious face and touched the tip of his nose slightly. How about you go up and dance a few times? Why don't you go up and dance? Jingyu gritted her teeth and glared at Jing Lang. Ahem. I'm a man. I'm your brother. Jing Lang said to Jingyu seriously. If I knew earlier, I would have let you dress up as a woman. I'll dress up as a man. Jingyu looked at Jing Lang fiercely and said. Jing Lang heard this and suddenly felt a chill down his spine. He was really speechless at his sister's troublesome thoughts. Now, what should we do? Jing Lang lowered his head and pointed to the bamboo stick in Jingyu's hand and asked, What else can we do? Jingyu raised her hand and put the bamboo stick into her sleeve. Then, she said indifferently, put it aside for now. Where are the people of Nether Sect? Why are you suddenly asking about the Nether Sect? Jing Lang was slightly taken aback. Xiao Chun is inside. Jingyu slightly stuck out her tongue and said, Last night, Xiao Chun came to find me. He is inside the Nether Sect. The 9 emperors are in the Nether Sect? Jing Lang was startled for a moment. Then, he remembered that after the Nether Sect entered the city, no one came inside. So, apart from hiding inside, where else could Xiao Chun be? As Jing Lang thought of this, he felt relieved. He pursed his lips and said, The Nether Sect seems to be acting as the judge this time. Pfft, judge? Jingyu almost spat out her rice. She looked at Jing Lang in horror and asked, Could it be the person who gave the score? Yes, I just want to inquire about it. It is said that this matter has caused a big disturbance. Jing Lang nodded and said. Jingyu suddenly felt pain in her cheeks. Xiao Chun actually went to be the judge, and she was bitterly thinking about how to perform. They had both sneaked into the city, so why was there such a big gap between them? It was simply too unfair. At this moment, Jingyu was filled with hidden bitterness. Inside a music hall in Yangzhou City, a wide platform was built. Below the platform were seats. On the second floor, there were seats for the judges. On the seats were the audience and so on. This music hall was specially built for today's music hall. Jingyu was wearing dark blue clothes today. The diamonds, crystals, and other things on her clothes were dazzling. Chapter 641. She had a cloak draped over her body, and the hair ornaments on her hair were also different from the others. At a glance, she was quite eye-catching. She had a strong exotic charm. As Jingyu walked, the crisp sound of bells on her wrists and ankles rang out. Jingyu's face was covered. As soon as she arrived at the venue, she instantly became the focus of everyone's attention. On the other hand, Jingyu was quite uncomfortable. The quality of her clothes was really too low. Those piercing crystal pieces, as well as some other things, kept rubbing against Jingyu's skin. Jingyu wished she could tear off these damned clothes. She really didn't know if these clothes were really meant for a human to wear. It was too fucking torturous. It was fine if the cloth was small, but how could the workmanship be so bad? Jingyu endured the discomfort and sat upright in the contestant's seat, quietly watching the stage. Not long after Jingyu arrived, more and more people arrived one after another. The venue was already crowded with people. There were scholars in white and green clothes, martial artists in coarse linen clothes, old people and children, and everything else. They were all whispering about today's music conference, wondering if it would be as exciting as the previous years. After the venue was filled with people, Jingyu finally saw the legendary judges. Both men and women were sitting upright on the second floor. The legendary host went up on stage to give a speech. Jingyu looked at this scene and felt that it was somewhat comical. It felt like watching a group of people in ancient costumes acting in modern times. It was quite interesting. When the host introduced the judges, Jingyu looked up but didn't see the figure she wanted to see. She frowned in confusion. Could it be that Xiao Chen wasn't a judge this time? Everyone. Just as Jingyu was thinking about this, she heard the host say, "Today, there is an extraordinary person who will be the judge. I believe everyone present has heard of this person before. He is the sect master of the Dark Church, the King of Hell." Hiss. Nether Sect's King of Hell? King of Hell is actually a judge? Why would the King of Hell appear in person? Is the cult going to turn over a new leaf? The Falling Moon Villa and Heaven-Seeking Pavilion actually didn't stop them? Let's see what that person says. As soon as the MC finished speaking, there was an uproar in the audience. Everyone exclaimed in surprise, and a cacophony of voices could be heard. Jingyu's eyes lit up when she heard the MC's words. She silently cursed in her heart. This fellow's entrance was really impressive. Everyone knows that there were some bad rumors about the Nether Sect. The supporter said, "But now, the Nether Sect has the intention to befriend our music hall. They don't have any bad intentions. How can we reject them because of the past? I hope everyone can be more understanding." Hee. I understand. Although some of them were doubtful, they still gave him face on the surface. This person had already said so, and you still didn't give him any face. You're so long-winded. I think the next person to be exterminated is very likely to be you. With this precedent, no one dared to say anything. They still had to show enough face. Today, the Nether Sect's King of Hell is honored to personally visit our music hall. This is our sincerity. The host seemed to be quite excited. His face was slightly red as he said, "I invite the Nether Sect's King of Hell to be one of the judges. In the future, the Nether Sect will be a friend of our music hall." Chapter 642. Following the host's words, everyone looked up to the second floor. At the corner of the second floor, a man in black slowly stepped out. His tall and slender figure exuded a cold aura from head to toe. His black hair was casually tied up, and a silver mask covered his face. He stood there quietly with his hands clasped behind his back. The entire place fell silent. Everyone held their breaths as they looked at the person who had appeared. The person in black clothes and black hair was like a ghost. King of Hell. The judges stood up one by one and bowed slightly to the person who had suddenly appeared with a courteous smile on their faces. Jingyu sat below and looked at the people who had been so arrogant just a moment ago. She looked at them with disdain and turned to look at Xiao Chen. She sighed inwardly. This person's aura changed too quickly. If she hadn't known beforehand, she would have thought that this was Xiao Chen. Jingyu couldn't tell that this person was Xiao Chen just by looking at him from below. Xiao Chen's appearance wasn't much different from that of the 9 emperors. Other than the mask and the change of hairstyle, there wasn't much difference. Jingyu pursed her lips slightly. She looked at Xiao Chen and nodded casually. Then, she walked casually towards the center seat. The judges' eyes twitched when they saw Xiao Chen's actions, but they didn't say anything. Even if someone wanted to say something, they were stopped by the people around them. They seemed to be quite harmonious and smiled as they followed Xiao Chen and the others to their seats. Only then did they take their seats. Jingyu narrowed her eyes and looked up. There was indeed someone following behind Xiao Chen. The person was dressed in black clothes and had a mask on his face. Jingyu didn't even need to think to know that this person was Qingguo. On the other side of Xiao Chen was a man dressed in black. He also had a mask on his face. Who else could be beside Xiao Chen, so familiarly other than Xingyi? Xiao Qin actually brought the two of them out so casually. Furthermore, it seemed like they only had a mask to cover their faces. If the mask fell, wouldn't they be done for? Jing Yu's mouth twitched. Just as she was about to look away, Xiao Qin's casual gaze swept over. He seemed to have glanced at Jing Yu. Jing Yu clearly felt displeasure in Xiao Qin's eyes. Xiao Qin was unhappy? Why? Jing Yu was slightly stunned. She lowered her head and looked at her clothes. A large part of her chest was exposed, as well as her exposed sleeves. Although she was wearing clothes at this time, he could still see them quite clearly. So this man was really unhappy that she was wearing this kind of clothes? Jing Yu's eyes were tinged with a faint smile. She looked up slightly. Xiao Qin had already turned his head away with an arrogant look as if he didn't know anyone. Qing Ji's eyes turned around and swept across her body so gorgeously. Then, he withdrew his gaze with some disappointment. Obviously, this guy didn't realize that this person was Jing Yu. How stupid. Jing Yu secretly ridiculed in her heart. She heard the host announce that today's audition had officially begun. Jing Yu sat upright and looked at the first person on stage. It was a woman playing the zither. She was quite good-looking, but the sound of the zither she played, she really couldn't bear to listen to it. Chapter 643. If there weren't so many people, Jing Yu would have covered her ears. What the hell is she playing? Look at the strength of the woman. It's as if she wants to eat the strings. Finally, the woman left the stage. Jing Yu could finally pretend to tidy her hair and rub her ears. It was simply torture. The opening was already so shocking. Jing Yu was a little scared. What would happen next? Fortunately, there weren't many weirdos. Most of them were normal. Jing Yu listened to the music as she played and ate. In the blink of an eye, more than 20 people had passed. Jing Yu didn't know much about music, but she still knew if the music was good or not. Number 29 had sent up a rather important person. What does rather heavyweight mean? Holy shit. Did you see that the stage was already shaking under her footsteps? Jing Yu stared dumbfoundedly at the woman who went up on stage with a zither. She swallowed her saliva silently and watched as the woman sat down. Immediately, the small chair that was perfectly fine collapsed. Instantly, there was a burst of laughter in the venue. Ha ha ha. Such a fat woman. Ha ha. Why are you still playing the zither like this? What an insult to the zither. There was a lot of mocking laughter below. Everyone was talking one after another. The woman's face turned red, but she didn't say anything. The host couldn't stand it anymore. He coughed and said to bring a sturdy chair over. No need, I don't need to sit. Who would have thought that the woman didn't care and waved her hand and said, if it breaks again, how will the people below sit? The woman was extremely fat. She sat on the stage with difficulty. The zither in her hand was placed on her lap. Because her body was too fat, her cheeks were full of meat, making it difficult for people to see her eyes clearly. The woman took a deep breath. No one knew if her eyes were closed or open, but she slowly raised her hand and placed her fat fingers on the strings of the zither. Under the mocking gazes of the crowd, she slowly plucked the strings. Moving sounds flew out from the strings of the guqin. The woman's fingers danced. It could be said that it was very ugly, but her skillful skills and smooth notes made everyone present widen their eyes in disbelief. They all stared at the woman on the stage who was playing the guqin without moving at all. The sound of the guqin lingered in the hall. Everyone was attracted by the sound of the guqin. They were either shaking their heads or swaying their heads in intoxication. The sound of the guqin was sometimes ethereal and quiet. Sometimes it was like flying on the battlefield. Sometimes it was arrogant and domineering. Sometimes it was gentle and moving. Until the end of the song, no one was able to come back to their senses. The woman seemed to have slowly let out a sigh of relief and smiled happily. Her chubby face also trembled because of her smile. Some of the men below shook their heads in pity. Such skills, but she looks. What a pity. When Jing Yu heard this, she turned her head slightly. She saw that many people seemed to have the same expression. Her heart trembled slightly. Looking at the woman who stood up with difficulty, she pursed her lips and frowned. This was the legendary saying of judging a person by their appearance. Wasn't she just a little fat? Very good. Just as everyone was talking, King of Hell Xiao Qian, who had been sitting quietly on the second floor and hadn't made a sound, suddenly spat out 2 words. It really shocked the judges. Chapter 644. Cough cough. This Sither skill is not bad, but I think it's still lacking. A person on Xiao Qin's left said. Lacking? Xiao Qin's deep eyes looked indifferently at the person on his left and said coldly, why don't we invite Senior Ling Feng to play a song and see if this zither skill is lacking? That person's face turned slightly ugly when he heard this. Everyone else also coughed slightly and turned their heads away without saying a word. The woman on the lower seat smiled faintly at this moment. Her actions were indeed very ladylike, but when she did it, it was so strange that people couldn't help but laugh. Thank you, King of Hell, for your compliment. I know I'm not good-looking, but I'm here to ask, in this world, do you distinguish between sounds and people? The woman lifted her chin slightly and looked at the crowd on the second floor with a scorching gaze. She looked very stubborn. This lady also wants to ask, do you people in this music house distinguish between sounds and people? Right at this moment, Qin Ruishan suddenly stood up. She raised her head slightly to look at the person sitting on the second floor and asked coldly. That person's cheeks turned slightly red. Hao Yu, who was not far away, saw Qin Ruishan standing up for that woman and stood up to reprimand her righteously. Hao Yu's reputation was pretty big. When Hao Yu stood up, more and more people started to speak up. Xiao Chun sat indifferently on his seat and looked at the person beside him who was embarrassed because of the discussion. Now that things had come to this point, how could he let the woman leave? Jingyu looked sideways at the woman, who silently returned to her seat. Her expression didn't change much. She wasn't unhappy because she couldn't enter the finals, nor was she happy because she could continue to compete. Jingyu raised her eyebrows with interest as she sized up this woman. That fat on her body was indeed a little frightening. However, how could a person be so fat? It was really hard to understand. The competition was still going on, and when Jingyu had nothing to do, it was finally her turn. Jingyu's lips curled up slightly. Under the call of the host, she slowly stepped onto the stage. On the stage, drums were brought up one after another. Everyone's eyes lit up. It wasn't that they hadn't seen drums before, and they had seen many drummers, but dancing on the drums? This was the first time they had seen it. Everyone stretched their necks and looked at the stage, anticipating Jingyu's next move. However, Jingyu acted as if she was serious and walked around the stage. Looking at the 3 connected drums, her face turned green. How the hell was she supposed to dance? Jingyu raised her head slightly to look at the judges on the second floor. She stared at Xiao Chun and sent him a clear message. Help me? However, Xiao Chun didn't even bat an eyelid. He just looked at Jingyu with a faint smile. Fuck. Was this guy planning to watch her make a fool of herself before making his move? Jingyu's face darkened. She looked at the drums and then at the sea of people below. She thought to herself, I don't care anymore. Since I'm already at this stage, I can only brace myself and do it. Wasn't it just drumming? Who didn't know how to do it? Jingyu rolled her eyes and raised her hand to call the MC over. After whispering a few words, the MC nodded and turned around to give instructions. Under the puzzled gazes of everyone, the MC came over with a red ribbon and 2 drumsticks. Chapter 645. Jingyu tied the drumsticks to the 2 ends of the red silk and pulled them tight. Then, she nodded slightly to the host, indicating that she was about to begin. Only then did the MC step back with a smile, leaving the stage to Jingyu. As the clear sound of the beginning rang out, Jingyu squatted down slightly and adjusted her aura. Under everyone's astonished gazes, Jingyu suddenly flipped over and landed in the center of the drum. An extremely oppressive drum sound rang out. Jingyu did not stop after landing. She flipped over twice and landed on the other 2 drums. After 3 dull drum beats, the red silk in Jingyu's hand flew up, and the drumsticks in her hand flew towards the 2 large drums with incomparable precision. The drum beats did not stop, sometimes high and sometimes low. Jingyu flipped in the air quickly and heavily. Her footsteps on the drums sounded again and again. The people below were dazzled. Jingyu's skillful movements, soft body, and precise technique were all admirable. As for the drumbeats, what? Drumbeats? They really did not understand what kind of charm it had. Jingyu did not know what she was dancing for. In her heart, she only thought that it would be fine as long as the drumbeats did not stop. At the end of the dance, Jingyu was already exhausted. The drumsticks in her hand fell fiercely. With a loud bang, the drumbeats in the hall gradually stopped. Oh my God! This dance was simply more tiring than killing people. Jingyu slowly stood up. Looking at the dazed crowd below, she suddenly felt her face turn red. It's over. This time, I've lost a lot of face. Fortunately, I'm wearing a veil, so I'm not the one who has lost face. Let's just let it pass like this. The people on the second floor fell into silence. They seemed to be conflicted about whether Jingyu's dance was good or not. The people below also fell into an intense debate. Those who were in favor of Jingyu's performance were all martial artists. Those who objected were all scholars and musicians. They said that Jingyu's drums were messy and had no sense of beauty at all. The two parties were at a stalemate. While everyone was discussing, the King of Hell, who had been sitting silently on the second floor, suddenly stood up. Under everyone's shocked gazes, the cold and sinister King of Hell from the Nether sect leaped down from the second floor and landed in front of Jingyu. Jingyu's body stiffened. She looked at Xiao Chun, who suddenly flew down in confusion. She had no idea what this guy wanted to do. You very good. A certain pretentious King of Hell said these three words to Jingyu in a rather domineering manner. Jingyu immediately felt a strange feeling in her heart, but on the surface, she displayed a pleasantly surprised expression. She looked somewhat nervously at Xiao Chun and said, King of Hell, you? Xiao Chun, what the hell are you doing? The position of the wife of the Nether sect's sect leader has been vacant for a long time. This king thinks that you are very suitable. Xiao Chun strode towards Jingyu. Under everyone's horrified gaze, Xiao Chun calmly spat out these words. He raised his hand slightly and lifted Jingyu's chin as he spoke calmly. Don't be so stupid. Thunder from a clear sky. At this moment, everyone in the venue fell into a daze because of Xiao Chun's earth-shattering words. What happened to the concert? Why did the high and mighty King of Hell hook up with a woman in the blink of an eye? Chapter 646. There's something wrong with this scene. Jingyu widened her eyes in shock. When she saw the teasing look in Xiao Chun's eyes, her face instantly darkened. Does this guy want to see me act bashful in front of so many people? Then, after doing something, he will start making fun of me? Bah, you're dreaming. Jingyu's lips curled into a faint smile. She curved her eyes and moved closer to Xiao Chun. Under everyone's gaze, Jingyu actually reached out her slender hand and lifted Xiao Chun's chin. She said indifferently, King of Hell, if you want me to be your wife, what kind of sincerity can you show me? Do you have the wealth? Or the power? Or perhaps your beauty? Jingyu's hand stroked Xiao Chun's silver mask with interest. This shocking action caused everyone to break out in cold sweat. What's going on now? King of Hell failed to tease someone and was the one being teased instead? Everyone stared with their eyes wide open, waiting for King Yinluo's next reaction. They still remembered a rumor that a woman who touched King Yinluo's clothes was chopped into pieces by King Yinluo in the next second. What about now? That small hand was brazenly touching his face. Everyone could almost see the tragedy that was about to happen. King of Hell's motionless figure seemed to bear the brunt of this storm. Xingyi and Qinggu, who were standing above, were completely stunned when they saw Xiao Chun doing this to a woman they didn't know. Jingyu's figure flashed across their minds. The first thought that came to their minds was, I will never tell madam. However, when they saw the woman who was being teased, so brazenly teased, Xiao Chun, while Xiao Chun stood there and allowed her to tease him, they suddenly realized that the woman must be Jingyu. Was there any other woman in the world who dared to act like Jingyu? Only their madam, after being teased, would actually tease back. Xingyi was speechless. Looking at the two on the stage, they were indeed a perfect match. Xiao Chun seemed to be taken aback by Jing Yu taking the initiative to tease him. He narrowed his eyes and looked at Jing Yu's bright eyes. The corners of his mouth curled up slightly. He raised his hand slightly and pulled Jing Yu into his embrace in front of millions of people. The corners of his mouth curled up slightly as he said indifferently, "This king has good stamina. I guarantee that he can satisfy madam." Good stamina. Jing Yu stared at Xiao Chun in shock. Those devilish eyes, that curled up corner of his mouth, and those words that made people wonder if they were real, caused the entire crowd to fall into a dead silence. Everyone present had internal energy. Xiao Qin's voice wasn't loud, but it wasn't soft either. When he said that, the women present immediately blushed. The men's eyes revealed ambiguous expressions, and their hearts were full of praise for Xiao Qin. "Brother, I give you full marks for your flirting skills." Jing Yu's face was almost completely red. She gritted her teeth and looked at Xiao Chun. Did this guy forget his moral integrity? You want to subdue this young lady so easily? That's impossible. Jing Yu's lips curled up slightly. She raised her arm and wrapped it around Xiao Qin's neck under countless gazes. She said, "Who knows if you just talk and don't do anything? King of Hell, your waist is really that good?" Chapter 647. Since you've said so, then this king, I'll let you do it. Xiao Qin's eyes narrowed. Jing Yu's provocative words had clearly provoked Xiao Qin. He tightened his grip on Jing Yu's waist. The corners of his lips curled up as he wrapped his arms around Jing Yu and leaped into the air. This king will be leaving first. This music hall is really good. Ha ha ha. Xiao Qin's arrogant laughter rang out. He actually carried Jing Yu away in front of everyone, leaving behind a group of dumbfounded humans who were unable to regain their senses for a long time. The drums were still there, but there was no one left. The host was also dumbfounded. After being a host for so many years, this was the first time he saw a judge come down to look for the madam. Moreover, he flirted with her in front of everyone and then took her away. So, this king of hell really went to prove that he had good stamina? What the hell was this? The sect leader of the Nether sect had found the madam. Was there anything more terrifying than this? The music hall was in an uproar. Meanwhile, in a certain restaurant, which had been completely booked by the people of the Nether sect, Xiao Qian brought Jing Yu here. When they entered the room, before Jing Yu could react, Xiao Chun pressed her down on a rather large bed. "Madam, now we can test it out properly," Xiao Qian said with a faint smile as he looked at Jing Yu. Hey, there's no one here now," Jing Yu said in a fluster as she pushed against Xiao Qian's chest. "Don't tell me you want someone to watch you do it?" Xiao Qian's eyes narrowed slightly. His words instantly made Jing Yu vomit blood. "When did I say that? Isn't it an act? Don't come over." Jing Yu raised her hands to push Xiao Qian away. However, Xiao Qian didn't budge at all. He frowned and grabbed Jing Yu's hands and placed them above Jing Yu's head. The corners of his lips curled up slightly as he said indifferently, "Madam, haven't you heard of acting becoming reality? Who wants to do it with you? Let go of me." Jing Yu was furious. She struggled with all her might, but her hands and feet were restrained by Xiao Qian. In the end, she began to bite him fiercely. "I'll bite you, you big bastard. Let go of me. Don't take off my clothes." The room was a mess's room. "Oh, so you like to do it with your clothes on? Ah, Xiao Qian, you bastard. Beast. Don't bite." The sun was shining brightly outside, but it was raging inside. Some of the secret guards were standing outside Xiao Qian's room. When they heard the commotion inside, they coughed awkwardly and stared blankly at the wooden stake without changing their expressions. They chanted the clear heart incantation 10,000 times in their hearts. "Master, can you not be so ferocious?" Xiao Chun and Jing Yu's legendary act became reality. It lasted until nightfall before they finally stopped. At this time, Jing Yu was soaking in the bathtub and rubbing her sore body. She felt wronged. This was the price she had to pay for taking liberties with the 9 emperors. Jing Yu was in tears. When the sky darkened, Jingyu changed into a black outfit. Xiaochen also came in from outside. When he saw Jingyu fixing her hair, the corners of his lips curled up slightly. He went forward and took the hairpin in Jingyu's hand and said, "Everything is ready. We'll cross the sea tonight and go to Meizhou." Jingyu responded. Her eyes were full of smiles as she watched Xiaochen clumsily fix her hair into a nondescript bun. Chapter 648. Xiaochen looked at Jingyu's hair, and his face darkened. He decisively gave up and put the hairpin back in Jingyu's hand. Every time he saw the maidservants doing the hair bun, it was so easy. Why was it so difficult for him to do it? Jingyu raised her hand to do a simple bun and said, "Let's go. If we are late, it will be too late." And Xiaochen looked at Jingyu's hair and silently made a decision. The next time he saw those maidservants, he must ask them how they did it. In Yangzhou City, Jingyu and Xiaochen led Qinggu and the others out of the restaurant quietly. They walked along the alley and wandered towards the pier by the sea. Although the sky was dark, there were still many people. When they got close to the pier, the number of people decreased. The ships from Yangzhou to Meizhou would definitely not set out at night. However, how could those private fleets not set out before they were given enough money? Jingyu and Xiaochen looked around the pier and frowned slightly. Looking at the situation, could it be that there were no ships? Just when Jingyu and Xiaochen were puzzled, they suddenly saw a figure walking out from the side of the road. It was a fat and burly figure. She was holding a zither in her hand. It seemed that she had just returned from somewhere to learn the zither. Jingyu naturally recognized this person. Wasn't it the fat girl who went up on the stage during the day? The girl raised her head and saw Jingyu and Xiaochen. She seemed to be slightly startled. Then she politely nodded to Jingyu and the others and walked around them. Jingyu looked at the fat girl's panting figure. Her footsteps felt so heavy. Mississippi, she didn't know what she was thinking, but Jingyu suddenly raised her voice and called out to her. "Miss, are you calling me?" The fat girl seemed to be startled by Jingyu. She looked around doubtfully, then raised her fat finger and pointed to the tip of her nose. "Exactly." Jingyu nodded slightly and looked at Qinggu. "You saw the problem, didn't you?" Although Qinggu didn't understand why Jingyu stopped the woman, he understood after hearing Jingyu's question. Jingyu was right. There was indeed something wrong with this woman's body. "Miss, I am a doctor." Qinggu bowed slightly to the fat girl and said, "Miss, may I take a look at your pulse?" "What? I'm not sick." The girl seemed to be a little frightened. Then, she looked at Jingyu and Qinggu vigilantly. There was a hint of caution in her eyes. "Miss, don't be afraid. I don't mean anything else." Jingyu lowered her head and said helplessly, "Don't you feel that your body is uncomfortable? If I'm not wrong, you weren't like this in the past. You must have started overeating a few years ago, causing you to become like this, right?" "You? How do you know?" The fat girl was shocked. She looked at Jingyu with fear and asked, "What do you mean by that? Do I have some kind of illness?" "If you want to know, let him take your pulse." Jingyu raised her chin slightly at the girl. The girl seemed to hesitate for a moment, then sighed and said, "I don't think I have anything for you to ask. Just take a look." Chapter 649. After saying that, the woman extended her hand for Qinggu to check her pulse. Qinggu only touched her wrist slightly before withdrawing his hand. "Miss, you're sick." Qinggu bowed slightly to the woman and said, "Originally, it was because of the medicine that caused your appetite to increase. Now, it's because you've developed this habit of overeating. If you can control it, you'll be cured." "What do you mean? What medicine?" The woman looked at Qinggu with a dazed expression and asked, "It should be because you ate something when you were 13 or 14. You ate it continuously for 3 or 4 months. That's when you started overeating. Am I right?" Qinggu frowned slightly and said, "This is a harmful act. It's ruined by a girl like you." "Miss, did you offend someone?" Jingyu raised her head slightly and saw that the woman's face had turned pale. 13 or 14 years old, white fungus soup, 3 or 4 months. The woman murmured word by word. "So it's her." My most beloved junior sister, but, Miss, your zither skills are unparalleled in the world. I helped you today because I was impressed by your zither skills at the music workshop. Jingyu looked at the woman and said indifferently, I look forward to passing by Yangzhou next year and seeing Mrs. Peerless Elegance again. Trample those who looked down on you under your feet. Jingyu smiled faintly at the woman and turned to leave with Qinggu. The woman stood there in a daze for a long time. Her heart was violently shaken. When she saw that Jingyu was far away, she suddenly came back to her senses and shouted, Miss, what's your name? Jingyu and Xiao Chun had already jumped onto a boat. They didn't answer the woman's shout. The woman stood there in a daze and watched the boat slowly move towards the center of the sea. She stood at the dock for a long time and was unable to come back to her senses. Her heart was filled with complicated feelings. On the medium-sized boat, Jingyu looked at the fat woman standing under the lights and smiled faintly. Why are you so interested in helping her? Xiao Chun stood beside Jingyu and tilted his head slightly to look at her. I wanted to help, so I helped. Jingyu looked up at Xiao Qian and said, I don't know why, but I can feel that even if this woman doesn't receive my help today, she'll be famous in the future. I'm just taking advantage of her and being a good person. Haha. Xiao Qian raised his hand and wrapped around Jingyu's shoulder and said, At least, you can make her famous 2 years earlier. It doesn't matter. Jingyu turned to Xiao Qian and said, How long will it take to get to Meizhou from here? 3 or 4 days at most, 2 days at least. Xiao Chun raised his hand and patted Jingyu's head. Then we can have a good sleep. Jingyu smiled and walked cheerfully towards the cabin on the boat. This was the first time she had seen the sea after transmigrating for so long. However, because it was too dark, there was no scenery to see. Jingyu decisively chose to go back to sleep. Because of Xiao Chun, Jingyu hadn't been able to get a good night's sleep. That night, Jingyu slept comfortably. When Jingyu woke up naturally, it was already the next morning. The boat was a bit swaying, so Jingyu wasn't used to it and woke up after a while. Chapter 650. Jingyu put on her clothes, rubbed her sleepy eyes, and walked out of the room. The sunlight outside was a little dazzling. Jingyu squinted her eyes and looked up. Under the wind of the sea, a slender figure stood on the deck. Xingyi stood behind Xiao Chun. Xingyi seemed to be reporting something to Xiao Chun. Xiao Chun frowned slightly and waved his hand lightly. Xingyi lowered his head and turned to leave. Xingyi turned around and saw Jingyu standing behind him. Just as he was about to greet her, Jingyu glared at him and gestured for him to keep quiet. Xingyi nodded in understanding and quietly retreated to the side. Jingyu tiptoed and controlled her breathing. She carefully walked towards Xiao Chun. Then, when she was close to Xiao Chun, she pounced and hung onto Xiao Chun's back. Xiao Chun held onto Jingyu and looked at Jingyu expressionlessly. Hey, why don't you have any reaction? Do you have eyes on the back of your head? Do you know it's me? Jingyu stared at him and poked Xiao Chun's cheek. Yeah, Xiao Chun replied faintly and put Jingyu down from his back. You really have eyes. Let me see. Jingyu said and was about to pry open the back of Xiao Chun's head to see what was going on. Xiao Chun's face darkened. He grabbed Jingyu's hand and said, I heard you open the door. Your ears are quite useful, Jingyu said with a smile as she tugged on Xiao Chun's ear. Xiao Chun was speechless at Jingyu's behavior. He pulled Jingyu to a chair and sat down. He squinted at the sparkling water and didn't say anything. Jingyu sighed in admiration as she looked at the blue sea. In a daze, she seemed to recall a distant memory. Back then, in the modern era, she had gone out to sea to complete a mission. In order to complete the mission, she had hidden herself in the sea in the -10°C weather. After the victory, she had drunk and celebrated with her teammates on the ship. That distant memory touched Jingyu's heart for a moment. Is this your first time seeing the sea? Xiao Chun, who had been silent for a long time, suddenly asked, Does seeing it in a dream count? Jingyu propped up her chin and said, The sea in my dream looks exactly the same as the sea here. Xiao Chun responded faintly and didn't say anything else. He rested his head on his hands and closed his eyes as if he was enjoying the sea breeze. Jingyu tilted her head and looked at Xiao Qin's profile. Her eyes flashed with a hint of struggle. Should she tell Xiao Qin about her past and her origins? If she did, what would Xiao Qin's reaction be? Jingyu frowned slightly and looked away. She didn't see Xiao Qin's slightly opened eyes. His gaze was a little doubtful and a little expectant. In the end, he returned to silence and continued to close his eyes. He didn't say a word. What did Xingyi say just now? After a long silence, Jingyu thought that Xiao Qin had fallen asleep. She asked tentatively, "There's news. The sea area we need to pass through is not safe," Xiao Qin said faintly. "Not safe?" Jingyu was taken aback when she heard this. She asked, "Could it be that the sacred race has already reached the surface of the sea?" "No." Xiao Qin slowly sat up and said, "In half a day's journey, we will enter an area where pirates are prevalent." Yangzhou's navy went out to clean up, but the results didn't seem to be good. The boatman's original intention was to bypass this area, but if we did, we would have to go through another place. It is very likely that we will be stopped by the navy. Chapter 651. So we're going to cross this pirate zone? Jingyu frowned slightly. She stood up and looked at the ship. There's nothing on this ship. How are we going to defend against pirates? If there are pirates, we'll be in trouble. It's no trouble at all. Xiao Qin said calmly, "Let's change the flag to the flag of the Nether sect. I think those pirates are quite knowledgeable." Jingyu was slightly stunned. She looked at Xiao Qin's arrogant face and wanted to pinch it. How could this guy be so cute? Jingyu thought so she did as she should. Jingyu pinched Xiao Qin's face seriously. Xiao Qin's body stiffened slightly. He turned to look at Jingyu. Jingyu blinked blankly and looked at her hand. Suddenly, she froze. She was annoyed. Just as she was about to withdraw her hand, Xiao Qin raised his hand and grabbed it. Jingyu looked up at Xiao Qin. Xiao Qin's eyes darkened slightly. He raised his hand and pulled Jingyu into his embrace. Every time Jingyu did something to him, Xiao Qin's heart couldn't help but tremble. "You were..." Xiao Qin looked at Jingyu with a burning gaze. Jingyu blushed slightly. She looked at Xiao Qin and sighed in her heart. She couldn't do anything to this man. "Okay." Jingyu responded and obediently leaned toward Xiao Qin. She kissed Xiao Qin's cheek and leaned against his chest. She listened to the warm heartbeat from Xiao Qin's chest and smiled faintly. "Your heartbeat is the same as mine." Xiao Qin smiled and hugged Jingyu tightly in his arms without saying a word. The ship sailed for half a day, and as expected, the flag on the ship had been changed to the flag of the Nether sect. However, the surrounding waters did not change. After sailing for half a day, they did not see a single pirate. Could it be that Jingyu was lucky this time? The legendary pirates had all gone home to sleep? Jingyu leaned against the railing of the deck for a long time, but couldn't see anything. She rubbed the tip of her nose, which had turned red from the wind, and yawned as she turned back to her room. What Jingyu didn't know was that somewhere in the deep sea, there was a figure swimming in the water. A small head popped out and squinted at the ship for a long time. In the end, it held its breath and dived back into the water, disappearing in an instant. On a certain island, there were people dressed strangely. They were either standing or sitting. Some of them were talking in a circle. There weren't many people, but it was very lively. In the middle of this group of people, there was a man wearing dark red clothes sitting in the middle. The wide chair was covered with a cloth. The man's black hair was draped over his shoulders. There were a few strands of white hair in front of his head. The hair covered the man's face. The man's head was lowered. He seemed to be sleeping or resting with his eyes closed. Boss, there's movement." A figure ran over excitedly. As he ran, he pinched his clothes and shouted, "The water monkey is back. What did you find?" Everyone stood up and asked excitedly when they heard the shouts. "There's a ship coming." The person called Water Monkey wiped the water off his face and excitedly rushed to the side of the man in the crimson robe and said. When the man heard this, he moved his body and slowly raised his head. His handsome face was revealed. One of his eyes was covered with a silver eye patch. Only one eye was open. He looked at the water monkey and asked, "What ship is this?" Chapter 652. Boss, I'm afraid we can't move this boat. The water monkey scratched his head in annoyance and said, "It's the Nether Sect's boat. I don't know why the Nether Sect's people would come out to sea." Nether Sect? The king of Hell's boat? The man in the dark red clothes moved his body lazily, revealing his muscular chest. There were 2 knife scars on his chest. He wore a pair of dark black gloves. One of his eyes was slightly narrowed, and the corner of his mouth curved into a cruel smile. The king of hell is finally willing to come out? Ha ha ha. The man laughed loudly. His eyes flashed with a fierce light as he said, "They all say that the king of hell is not to be trifled with. Today, I want to see just how powerful the king of hell is. Brothers, take your weapons. The king of hell's head is mine. Roar, roar, roar. Boss is mighty." When the crowd heard the man's words, they immediately cheered enthusiastically. The sea was as calm as ever. Jingyu and Xiao Chun had already returned to their rooms to sleep. The sky was dark, and the sea breeze was even louder. Looking at the weather, it seemed like it was going to be a windy day. After staying on the boat for a day, Jingyu was already quite familiar with it. She didn't feel uncomfortable at all. It wasn't her first time on a boat, so she got used to it quickly. Jingyu rested her head on Xiao Chin's arm. Just as she was sleeping, the boat that was moving smoothly suddenly shook violently. Jingyu and Xiao Chun were startled and sat up. Looking at the shaking boat, they frowned slightly. "What's going on?" Jingyu asked with a frown. "I'm afraid we've hit something," Xiao Chun said as he stood up. He quickly put on his clothes and said calmly, "I'll go out and take a look." Jingyu watched Xiao Chun leave. After hesitating for a moment, she also stood up and changed her clothes. She opened the door and walked out. The boat's lanterns were lit. From afar, she seemed to hear the boatman telling Xiao Chun that they might have hit a reef and that he was sending people down to investigate. Jingyu frowned slightly and looked up into the distance. The surface of the sea was dark. Jingyu walked to the side of the ship and bent down slightly to look down. All she could hear was the sound of flowing water, but she didn't see a single person. Just as Jingyu was about to look away, her ears twitched. Suddenly, she heard the sound of something hitting the wooden planks. Her face turned cold and she bent down to look again. This time, Jingyu didn't look away. Instead, she frowned and focused. In the night, Jingyu's black eyes suddenly turned green. Jingyu could see the sea clearly now. Jingyu narrowed her eyes. The sound in her ears became clearer and clearer, and the scene in front of her became clearer. Under Jingyu's gaze, she suddenly saw a human figure swim to the bottom of the boat like a fish. Jingyu's eyes suddenly shrank and turned black. She turned her head and shouted, "There's someone in the water!" Jingyu had just finished speaking when the boat shook violently again. This time, the shaking was even more violent. At this moment, a cry of alarm came from afar. "Not good. The bottom of the boat is broken. Water is entering the boat." "What?" Xiao Chin's face suddenly turned cold. He quickly walked to Jingyu's side and squinted his eyes to look at the sea. "Find someone to fix the bottom of the boat and call someone to guard the deck." Jingyu looked up at Xiao Chun and said. Just as Jingyu was about to say something, she suddenly saw a boat slowly appear on the surface of the sea. Chapter 653. The ship was too far away. It was impossible to see what was written on it. Moreover, it was nighttime. "It's here." Xiao Chun narrowed his eyes slightly. He looked at the slowly approaching ship with a cold glint in his eyes. The ship shook even more violently. Everyone ran to the bottom of the bed to fix the hole. However, the hole could not be fixed no matter how hard they tried. The wind on the surface of the sea was getting stronger and stronger, and the fog was getting thicker. The ship seemed to be moving forward. It was obvious that something was dragging the ship under the water. "Sir, we can't do it. The ship is sinking." A few young men ran over and shouted anxiously, "Quick, put down the boat." The boatman's face turned pale when he heard that. He hastily said, Take the small boat and leave quickly before those pirates get close. Yes. Everyone hurriedly ran to the side. Jingyu and Xiao Chen stood where they were, looking at the ship that was slowly approaching them from afar. Their eyes were grave. Seeing the flag on the ship, they knew it was the ship of the Nether sect. Yet, they still dared to have designs on it. It seemed that this person was not a kind person. A silver lightning bolt struck down from the sky. Thunder rumbled. Everyone on the deck fled in all directions. Raindrops mixed with the strong wind fell. Jingyu and Xiao Chun ran to the place where the small boats were lowered. One after another, small boats were lowered to the surface of the sea with ropes. Everyone slid down the boats and sat on them. However, when the person who sat on the boat rowed a short distance, several figures suddenly emerged from the water. They shouted and overturned the boat in an instant. This is bad. There are people in the water. The boatman looked at the person who fell into the water. It was as though he was pulled into the water by something. He did not have time to resist at all. We can't leave. Xiao Qian turned his head slightly and looked at the ship that was getting closer and closer. He finally saw the pattern on the ship's sail. It was a tattered flag with a sword and a skull on it. The pattern was somewhat similar to the pattern of Xiao Qian's Nether Society. The ship was sinking rapidly, and the hull was beginning to tilt. The wind and rain were getting stronger. As the pirate ship approached, many sailors and those who knew how to swim jumped into the water and disappeared. No one knew if they were dead or alive. Jingyu looked up and saw the approaching ship. On the tattered ship, there were people wearing strange clothes and holding shiny big swords in their hands. As the two ships approached, Jingyu could hear the enthusiastic cries of the pirates amidst the wind and rain. Roar! Ha ha ha! Kill! Damn! There are women! Ha ha ha! Kill! Excited cries rang out. The bandits swung the ropes in their hands toward Jingyu and Xiao Chen's ship. They tied the ropes to the ship's pole and jumped onto the deck. Xiao Chun looked coldly at the approaching figures. He narrowed his eyes and stared at the opposite ship as though he was looking for something. Jingyu looked up at Xiao Chun. Her eyes were filled with questions. Kill. Xiao Chun stood with his hands behind his back. Even at a moment like this where they could die at any time, Xiao Chen's face did not change at all. He tilted his head slightly and spat out two words. Xing Yi, who was standing behind Xiao Chun, bowed slightly and narrowed his eyes coldly. Chapter 654. He unsheathed the long sword at his waist and dashed toward the pirates like a ghost. All the black-clothed men moved out one after another, silently charging toward the pirates. The pirates on the other side saw this scene clearly, and their eyes were filled with fear. The pirates tightened their grip on the ropes in their hands, but they didn't dare to fly over. A few of them looked at each other, and hesitation appeared in their eyes. The pirates on this ship weren't simple people, and the subordinates of the Nether sect weren't idle people either. They couldn't win with brute force, and they couldn't bear to see their brothers throw their lives away. One of them raised his hand and shouted to stop the people who wanted to go over. He stood on the deck of the pirate ship and seemed to be talking. Damn it! Let's fight it out with them. Use the ship to ram them and sink them. Once we're in the water, it's our world. That's right, that's right. The crowd echoed one after another, and shouts rang out again. The pirate ship looked shabby, but the hull was surrounded by sharpened wooden stakes. It fiercely rammed toward Jingyu and Xiao Chen's ship. The ship shook violently, and Jingyu and Xiao Chun couldn't stand still. You are... Xiao Chen raised his hand to grab Jingyu, but because the ship was shaking too violently, Xiao Chen slid to one side. Jingyu's body swayed, and she almost fell off the deck. Xiao Chen's heart suddenly shrank when he saw this. Fortunately, Jingyu's eyes were sharp, and she quickly pulled out her dagger and stabbed it deeply into the ship's hull. Damn pirates! The rain wet Jingyu's veil, and it stuck to her face, making her feel uncomfortable. Jingyu's eyes flashed with a fierce light, and she raised her hand to tear off the veil on her face. Xingyi, give me the bow and arrows. Jingyu steadied herself and coldly shouted at Xingyi, who wasn't far away. Xingyi was slightly stunned. He lowered his head and saw the longbow and quiver at his feet. He hooked the longbow with the tip of his foot and raised his hand to throw it at Jingyu. Xiao Chun saw Jingyu's action, and he slightly tilted his head to look at the pirate ship. When the pirates saw that the ship ramming seemed to have a good effect, they immediately cheered and prepared for the second ramming. Jingyu suddenly raised the longbow in her hand. She nocked an arrow and pointed it straight at the approaching pirate ship. The cold tip of the arrow carried a bloodthirsty, murderous aura. In this rainy night, the woman stood at the bow of the ship. Just as the pirate ship was about to approach, the woman who was soaked in water stood there. Jingyu's eyes turned cold, and the arrow in her hand flew out. Without any obstruction, it directly hit the heart of the man standing in the middle, killing him in one blow. The man didn't even have the slightest reaction, nor did he feel any pain before he stopped breathing. Schwanner. The power of this arrow was too great, and no one could react in time. They saw with their own eyes that the person who was commanding them a moment ago had his heart pierced by an arrow. Their eyes were filled with fear, and they looked up. When they saw that on the deck, a petite woman slowly lowered the longbow in her hand, their expressions became strange. "Quickly go find the boss," one of them shouted. The petite man responded, quickly stood up, and quickly ran towards the ship's cabin. Jingyu and Xiao Qian were on the ship, and the bow of the ship began to sink rapidly. Jingyu and Xiao Qian looked at each other with fear in their eyes. Looking at the rolling waves, Jingyu frowned. If this continued, they would definitely fall into the sea. Chapter 655. Let's go down. Xiao Qian tightened his grip on Jingyu's hand. Both of them held onto the railing tightly as they watched the sailors and boatmen fall into the sea. Some of them even had their chests pierced by falling logs, causing them to faint. Jingyu clenched her fists slightly and looked up at the pirate ship. She flipped over and stood on the railing at the bow of the ship. She watched with her own eyes as the ship sank bit by bit. On the opposite pirate ship, a slender figure slowly stepped out. The figure that suddenly appeared was obviously the pirate leader of this group of bandits. In the dark night, he wore dark red clothes and seemed to be talking to someone beside him. Jingyu's eyes turned cold. Looking at his appearance, he was actually a pirate leader. "Xiao Chun, the ship is sinking. I'm afraid it's not safe to stay in the sea." Jingyu looked at Xiao Chun and said, "Don't let go of my hand." Xiao Chun looked at Jingyu indifferently. His 10 fingers were tightly clenched. "Okay." Jingyu nodded. Xiao Chun and Xingyi glanced at each other. Xingyi immediately understood Xiao Chun's meaning and nodded slightly. He walked to the side and pulled Qinggu, who was being protected by Jinglang. Jinglang also jumped onto the railing at the bow of the ship. "Help." "Ah." Qingyi was dragged onto the railing at the head of the bed by Interrogation Officer 1. His face instantly turned pale with fright, and he wailed like a ghost as he hugged the pole in his hands tightly, refusing to let go. "Big brother, don't let go of Qinggu. We have to abandon the ship." Jingyu raised her voice and shouted to Jinglang, "After getting off the ship, don't swim too far. Hold your breath and swim to the bottom of the sea. Once you dive deeper, swim further. That way, those people won't be able to catch us." "Okay." Jinglang nodded. "No, I can't hold it in for that long." Qinggu immediately started crying. He hugged the pole in his hand tightly and said, "Ninth brother, why don't you go talk to your pirate leader?" I'm willing to surrender." Jingyu's face darkened. What a good-for-nothing. Just as Jingyu was discussing, the pirate ship once again slammed into the hull of the ship. Jingyu suddenly lost her grip. Xiao Qin's eyes turned cold, and he pulled Jingyu into his embrace. The two of them hugged each other tightly and fell towards the sea. The king of hell is actually protecting a woman. On the pirate ship, a man in dark red clothes let out a cry of surprise. He clearly saw Xiao Chun falling into the sea with Jingyu in his arms. "Boss, what do we do now?" A person beside the man asked. "Let the water monkey bring people into the sea." The man lazily curled the corners of his mouth and said, "It doesn't matter if the king of hell can't catch them. I want that woman." "Ha ha ha. Boss is finally eating meat?" When everyone heard the man's words, they immediately roared with laughter. They rubbed their fists and said, "Boss has taken a fancy to the king of hell's woman. We brothers have to snatch her no matter what." That's right, that's right. Let's go into the sea. Ha ha ha. Boss, wait for us brothers to help you snatch her back. Oh, let's go. One figure after another jumped into the sea with cheers. The figures that entered the sea were like fish that entered the water, disappearing in the blink of an eye. Their nimble movements and teasing words made the man standing on the ship with his hands behind his back smile faintly. Chapter 656. It was pitch black in the cold sea. Jing Yu's eyes changed slightly. Her dark green eyes were dazzling in the water. Xiao Chun held Jing Yu's hand tightly and dived down to the bottom of the sea. There was no one around them at first, but when Jing Yu was about to swim upstream, countless figures suddenly swam towards them from afar. The figures of those people were particularly different. Their swimming speed in the water was many times faster than Jing Yu's. This situation made Jing Yu's heart tremble slightly. Xiao Chun held Jing Yu's hand and swam even faster. He pulled out his dagger and was ready to fight at any time. The black figures were getting closer and closer. Jing Yu and Xiao Chun were forced to stop. They watched as those people blocked the way out for Jing Yu and Xiao Chun. Then, they used hand gestures that they couldn't understand at all. One after another, they attacked Jing Yu and Xiao Chun. Jing Yu clenched the dagger in her hand and fought back. However, because one of her hands was held by Xiao Chun, she couldn't move her body flexibly. She frowned slightly. Xiao Chun seemed to be restrained because of this. Jing Yu wanted to let go of her hand, but Xiao Chun held it even tighter. Xiao Chun made a hand gesture to Xiao Chun. She didn't care whether Xiao Chun could understand it or not. She broke free from Xiao Chun's hand and quickly swam in a direction. It was quite difficult for her to wave the dagger in her hand in the water. Fortunately, Jing Yu could also use the water to push herself away. She had been in the water for too long. She had to swim to the surface. However, just as Jing Yu was about to swim upstream, she found that everyone was holding back Xiao Chen. Jing Yu's heart tightened. She quickly turned around and swam back. Xiao Chen anxiously waved at Jing Yu, indicating that Jing Yu should go first. He would hold them back. Jing Yu wouldn't let Xiao Chen do that. She quickly slit a person's throat and grabbed Xiao Chen's hand again. She seemed to want to push Xiao Chen to the surface. However, her sharp eyes saw that Xiao Chen's back was bleeding. The blood was very obvious in the water. The stagnant qi in her chest became more obvious. Just as Jing Yu was anxious, she suddenly saw Xingyi swimming quickly from not far away. She was happy. She pulled Xiao Chun and swam quickly for a distance. Suddenly, she swung Xiao Chen's head and blocked Xiao Chen's mouth. She transferred the remaining qi in her mouth into Xiao Chen's mouth. The pirates behind her followed like a shadow. Xiao Chun was stunned by Jing Yu's actions. His eyes suddenly showed fear. He seemed to have noticed Jing Yu's actions. He raised his hand to grab Jing Yu. However, Jing Yu dodged and pushed Xiao Chun fiercely in the direction of Xing Yi. In the sea, Xiao Chun saw Jing Yu's figure moving away from him. He stretched out his hand to grab Jing Yu. However, all he could grab was the water behind him. Run! In the sea, Jing Yu opened her mouth and shouted. She allowed the seawater to enter her mouth and nose. She saw Xing Yi dragging Xiao Chun with a shocked expression. She saw Xiao Chun struggling to swim over, but was dragged away by Xing Yi. Jing Yu slowly breathed a sigh of relief. The pirates behind her caught up. Jing Yu used the last of her strength to stab a few of them. Finally, when she saw that Xiao Chan and Xing Yi had disappeared, the ink-black dagger in her hand slowly fell and sank to the bottom of the sea. Jing Yu's eyes were slightly open as her figure slowly sank to the bottom of the sea. In the last moments of Jing Yu's consciousness, she saw the pirates who were originally chasing after her suddenly come forward and drag her upstream. He was dressed in a dark red robe, with a black belt and black gloves. His exposed chest muscles made Jing Yu's eyes twitch violently. Her gaze landed on the man's silver eye patch, and his black hair was casually scattered. Damn, this was a very pretentious style. TSK, TSK, TSK. Exhibitionist. He didn't even wear his clothes properly. Jingyu curled her lips in disdain. The two girls' faces turned red when they saw the legendary young master. Chapter 658. She bowed shyly to the man and called out sweetly, "Young master, you two little beauties can leave." The man's lips curled into a faint smile. He waved his hand at the two and dismissed them. Jingyu leaned against the bed and crossed her arms. She looked at the man with interest. With Jingyu's eyesight, how could she not recognize who this man was? Wasn't he the pirate leader who had crashed into her ship and caused her to fall into the sea and almost die? Not surprised? Not curious? Not afraid? The man raised his eyebrows and asked when he saw Jingyu sizing him up. He found it interesting. Surprised? Curious? Afraid? Jingyu's incomparably calm question stumped the man. Looking at Jingyu's calm little face, he laughed out loud. "You are indeed worthy of being the woman that the king of hell has taken a fancy to. How interesting." "I say, who are you?" Jingyu stretched and stood up. She blinked and looked at the man. "Are you an enemy of the Nether sect? Shouldn't you kill the king of hell by hook or by crook? Why did you capture me? I'm just curious." The king of hell, who doesn't care about human lives, actually has a woman. The man leisurely walked in front of Jingyu and sized up Jingyu's face. Jingyu could clearly see the man's face. If he didn't have that annoying silver eye patch, he would be a handsome man. What a pity. He had such a good face, but he was blind in one eye. "Now that you've seen me, can you let me go?" Jingyu blinked and looked at the man. Hee hee. "I'm afraid even if I let you go, you won't be able to get far." As the man spoke, he raised his hand and took out a piece of paper from his sleeve. Jingyu took it and unfolded it in confusion. There were 3 large words on the paper that stung Jingyu's eyes. Arrest warrant. However, the most terrifying thing was the portrait. "I'm going to fucking kill the person in the portrait. Is this a fucking painting of me?" That nose was like a pig's nose. Jingyu looked at the portrait with a dark expression and tried her best to look away. She looked at the bounty on it. Not bad, not bad. The bounty has increased again. It's already worth more than 1,000 taels of gold. It looks like Xiao Yi is really going all out this time. How is it? The 9th Imperial Concubine. The man looked at Jingyu's pale face and thought that Jingyu would be begging him. But the truth was, too ugly. Jingyu opened the wanted poster seriously and pointed at the portrait on it. Then, she pointed at herself and asked the man, "Tell me, which part of the person on this poster looks like me? My beautiful face was actually scribbled like this? Look at this nose." The man stared blankly at Jingyu, who was filled with righteous indignation, and suddenly laughed. "Ha ha ha." The man laughed and looked at Jingyu. "This young master wanted to exchange you for some money. Now, it looks like I'll regret it later." "Let me tell you, the bounty will increase. If you keep me here for another 2 or 3 days, the bounty on this warrant will double." Jingyu looked at the man with a smile and said, "When the time comes, you can exchange me. Won't you make a huge profit?" "Ha ha ha, how interesting." The man laughed happily. Jingyu's appearance was very pleasing to the eye. Chapter 659. Since you've said so, this young master will naturally keep you. The man stood with his hands behind his back and smiled at Jingyu. "You can stay here. If you need anything, just instruct the maids. Your den of thieves is really high-end. You even have maids." Jingyu calmly raised her eyebrows and walked back to the bed. "I'm hungry. I want to eat. Also, is the king of hell dead? Why? Are you worried?" The man narrowed his eyes and asked. "Can I even ask?" Jingyu curled her lips indifferently and narrowed her eyes. "He's not dead." The man turned around and left after saying those 2 words. Jingyu's heart, which had been hanging in the air, finally calmed down. Jingyu laid on the bed. Sure enough, this man brought all the delicious food and drinks. Jingyu stared at the food for a long time and silently said, "Even if I die, I won't starve to death." She had no idea what this man wanted to do by bringing her here. As Jingyu ate, she thought about something. When she felt the burning gazes of the two young ladies beside her, even with Jingyu's willpower, she couldn't help but silently raise her hand to wipe her mouth. She turned to look at the two young ladies and asked, "Tell me, what do you want to ask?" I want to ask, how did you meet the young master? I heard that the young master saved you. Do you want to be our young master's wife? You still haven't told us your name." The two young ladies looked at Jingyu and asked excitedly. Hearing their questions, Jingyu's forehead dripped with sweat. "What kind of questions are these?" "I don't know your young master. He's a pirate who wants to kill me. I don't know why he saved me. I'm a married woman and can't be your young master's wife. Finally, my name is Jingyu." Jingyu took a deep breath and answered their questions cleanly. Luckily, the two young ladies were pleasantly surprised and patted their chests. "Luckily, you don't want to be our young master's wife. We still have a chance." Jingyu sweated profusely. What kind of maids are these? They're even thinking about their master. Speaking of which, what's your young master's name? Jingyu blinked and asked. "So you don't even know our young master's name?" The round-faced young lady said in surprise. "It seems like you really don't know our young master. Our young master is the most handsome and the best man on this island. His name is Mingyuan." "What a poetic name," the young lady said with a look of worship, which made Jingyu's eyes twitch. "It's over. These two young ladies are too poisoned. Where's the poetic name?" Jingyu ate silently. In the following time, the two young ladies were exclaiming about their young master. How many earth-shattering good deeds he had done in the past, such as killing some corrupt officials, saving them, and so on. Jingyu also learned about this pirate gang from the two of them. They were very ordinary yet not ordinary pirates. They were tyrannical in this area all year round. They specifically targeted the ships of officials and wealthy merchants, but they turned a blind eye to the commoners. They were very casual. After Jingyu ate and drank to her heart's content, she stepped out of the house for the first time. Walking outside, she could hear the shouting from afar. Jingyu walked forward slightly and saw that at the foot of the mountain, groups of people seemed to be wrestling. Chapter 660. That man, Mingyuan, was currently holding a jug of wine in one hand and playing with an arrow in the other. He was watching the wrestling competition below and laughing heartily with the crowd. He watched as the pirates teased and complained tearfully to Mingyuan. Mingyuan unceremoniously kicked them away. This caused the crowd to laugh in pain. Men and women gathered together, and the scene was very lively. Jingyu stood above and looked at the man with some confusion. So this was how the ancient pirate's lair was like? Just as Jingyu was letting her imagination run wild, the people below seemed to have noticed Jingyu and suddenly became lively. They laughed and said something to Mingyuan. Then, Mingyuan, who was originally watching the fight, raised his head and looked over. His pitch-black eyes looked at Jingyu, and the corners of his mouth curled up into a faint smile. "Boss, quickly go and invite the lady down." That's right. Boss, quickly go. Roar, roar, roar. Let that lady see the glory of our Ghost King cave." The crowd laughed and cheered. Jingyu raised her eyebrows slightly. She originally thought that this man would definitely ignore these people and treat them as a joke. She didn't expect that Mingyuan would really stand up and walk towards Jingyu. Instantly, the crowd below cheered. Jingyu widened her eyes and looked at Mingyuan walking up. The corners of her eyes twitched slightly. Should she not have come out just now? Our brothers are so enthusiastic. Shouldn't you give them some face too? Ninth Imperial Concubine. Mingyuan's lips curled up into a faint smile as he slowly extended his hand towards Jingyu. Mingyuan's action immediately caused the people below to hold their breaths. They were so excited that their faces turned red. They seemed to be very anxious and wanted to put Jingyu's hand on Mingyuan's. If you want to go down, then go down. Just call out. Jingyu faintly glanced at Yuan Mingyuan's hand, then turned around and walked straight down. Aya, it's not connected. Ha ha ha. Boss is being despised. Boss, don't be discouraged. Keep going. Yuan Mingyuan rubbed his forehead, feeling a headache coming on. He glared at the people who were shouting the loudest, and then calmly followed behind Jingyu. After Jingyu went down, she found that there was no place for her to sit. Coincidentally, she saw that there was a chair next to where Yuan Mingyuan had been sitting. She happily went over and moved the chair over. Then, she sat down in front of everyone. Everyone was stunned for a moment. Then, all of their faces revealed ambiguous expressions as they turned to look at Yuan Mingyuan. It had to be known that this chair wasn't something that anyone could sit on. Would Jingyu be kicked out? Yuan Mingyuan paused and glanced at Jingyu. He watched as Jingyu casually sat in a chair and looked up at him. That kind of indifference, that clean and transparent appearance caused Yuan Mingyuan to faintly raise the corners of his mouth. Yuan Mingyuan didn't chase Jingyu away. Instead, he lifted his robe and sat on the main seat. Wow, this scene is like a painting. Ha ha ha, you even know how to paint. Everyone saw the two of them sit down. Suddenly, there was a wave of cheers. The wrestling match started again. Sitting so close to them, Jingyu could see clearly. She watched the two men wrestle with each other. She was very focused. Who would win? Jingyu was very focused. Yuan Mingyuan was originally watching as well. Perhaps it was because an unfamiliar figure suddenly appeared beside him. Yuan Mingyuan's gaze unconsciously fell on Jingyu. In the end, Yuan Mingyuan simply looked at Jingyu openly. She found a direction and jumped onto the rock, heading towards the surface of the sea. It was when the sun was at its peak. The closer Jingyu walked, the more she could hear the shouting and talking. Jingyu secretly ridiculed as she climbed up. This Yuan Mingyuan really knows how to choose a place to build his nest. There were rocks everywhere. Who would have thought that this island full of rocks would be the nest of pirates? Jingyu crawled through countless holes. She could clearly hear the shouting and killing sounds. But no matter how Jingyu walked, she seemed to be wandering around this place. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.